Ever get that feeling, like you're on a cosmic hamster wheel? The same routines, the same desires, just spinning and spinning.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, today we're diving deep into an excerpt from Vedantic philosophy, and it really tackles this whole idea, cyclical time and desire. Don't worry, we'll break it down, make it make sense. Even if you're not a Vedanta expert,
Right.
it's a system of thought in Hinduism, and it
Right.
really explores the nature of reality and the self.
Mm,
Pretty deep stuff, but it can get surprisingly relatable.
absolutely. And you know what I think is really cool about this excerpt?
Mm-hmm.
It starts with stuff we all know. Like, think about the cycle of day and night, the
Yeah,
changing seasons, things we all experience.
right. But it doesn't just stop there, right? I mean, it connects those everyday cycles to something much, much bigger. Samsara, did that jump out at you at all?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Samsara, it's this massive cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It's central to, Hinduism and Buddhism.
Yeah.
It's like you zoom out from just like the day-to-day grind, and then you see this huge pattern playing out.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see where that hamster wheel feeling comes in. So we're not just talking about like literal time here, are we? It's more about a feeling of being stuck.
Exactly. It's like you said, that feeling of being caught in this loop, repeating the same patterns over and over again. And this excerpt, it really makes time like an active player in all this.
Yeah.
It even uses the word, plays.
Yeah.
Like time itself is orchestrating these cycles.
That whole image of time playing our lives, it's a little unsettling.
Mm-hmm.
But it does ring true, though, doesn't it? I mean,
Oh.
who hasn't felt time just slipping away? Like, where did the year go?
It really is a universal experience, isn't
Uh-huh.
it? And the text, it connects this to the concept of Maya.
Okay, Maya. I heard that before, but I don't think I've ever totally grasped it.
It's a tough one. It's often translated as like illusion,
Yeah.
but it's a specific kind of illusion.
Okay.
It's the illusion of the material world, the way, things appear to us. And that often makes us completely forget about the eternal part of ourselves.
So Maya is like kind of like a veil almost. It makes us focus on the temporary stuff and miss the bigger picture.
Precisely. And this leads us to another key player in this cycle, desire.
Mm-hmm.
The excerpt uses this really striking image of a wind of desire that never leaves the individual.
Right.
Even when we achieve something, a new desire pops up. It keeps that wind blowing.
That image, it really resonates. It's like we're on a Ferris wheel, constantly reaching for the next brass ring, but as soon as we grab it, another one, it just appears, just out of reach.
It is a powerful metaphor, isn't it, for how desire can keep us stuck in this cycle. Vedanta sees desire as the root of suffering because it keeps us so attached to things that are temporary.
Okay, I get that. Like constantly chasing after things can lead to a lot of frustration. But isn't some desire like necessary to, achieve things, to grow?
You're absolutely right. And the excerpt, it isn't suggesting that all desire is bad.
Right.
The kind of desire it's cautioning against is the kind that keeps us from true fulfillment, the kind that comes from a sense of lack, of being incomplete.
So it's more about being mindful of what's driving those desires. Are we
Yeah.
coming from like genuine inspiration, or are we just desperately trying to fill some kind of void?
Exactly.
Mhm.
And the text, it offers some practical ways to break free from this cycle. It mentions practices like mindfulness of time, detachment, self-inquiry, and meditation on Brahman, which is the ultimate reality in Vedanta.
Okay, so let's unpack these practices a little bit. They sound, I don't know, a little mystical, but you're saying they can actually be applied to like everyday life.
Absolutely. Take mindfulness of time, for example. It's not just about staring at the clock.
Right.
It's about cultivating a deeper awareness of the present moment,
Ah.
appreciating its value instead of always wishing for something else.
Oh, so we're always rushing towards the next thing, always caught in that wind of desire. We're gonna miss out on the richness of what's right in front of us.
Exactly.
That actually makes a lot of sense. But how does this like help us get off the Ferris wheel, so to speak?
Okay, so by recognizing how fleeting each moment is, we start to detach from the illusion that lasting happiness can be found in external things. And that's where, detachment comes in.
Detachment. That can sound kind of intimidating. Does it mean like giving up everything you enjoy?
No, not at all. It's not about renouncing all your possessions or pleasures, but it's about shifting your relationship to them.
Okay.
Realizing that your happiness doesn't depend on clinging so tightly to things or outcomes.
Yeah.
Think of it like, loosening your grip on the Ferris wheel safety bar.
Hmm.
You're still on the ride, but you're not holding on for dear life.
Okay, I see the connection now. Detachment is more about like an inner shift than an outward change.
Hmm.
So what about self-inquiry? What does that involve?
Self-inquiry is about turning your attention inward and asking some really deep questions like,
Hmm.
who am I really? What is this self that experiences all these desires and frustrations? It's a process of, getting to know yourself
Uh,
on a deeper level,
yeah.
beyond, just the surface of your personality and ego.
So it's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
Exactly.
There's the idea that like we might find something more stable, more essential at the core.
Exactly. Vedanta suggests that our true self, our true nature, it's not bound by those fleeting desires, by that sense of being stuck on that Ferris wheel.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What about this last practice, meditation on Brahman? What does that even mean, like practically speaking?
Okay. So Brahman is the ultimate reality in Vedanta. It's beyond all cycles, all limitations, all desires. And while it might sound abstract, meditating on Brahman is about connecting with that deeper reality, that part of ourselves that's already free.
So if these other practices are about like loosening our grip on the Ferris wheel, meditation on Brahman is about stepping off completely.
You could say that, yeah. It's about realizing that our true nature it's already whole, it's already
Yeah.
complete, it's already free.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. But even just this brief overview, it's giving me a whole new perspective on that feeling of being stuck. It's like there's actually a way out.
And that's the amazing thing about Vedanta. It's not just about describing the human condition, it's about offering these practical tools for transformation.
That's incredibly empowering. But I'm curious, like, how do these practices actually work in real life?
Let's dive into that. We can look at how each of these practices can be integrated into, everyday life.
Okay. I'm ready to get off this Ferris wheel and see what else is out there. Okay, so we've talked about these, really powerful practices, mindfulness of time, detachment, self-inquiry, and meditation on Brahman. But how do we actually weave them into, I don't know, like the tapestry of our everyday
Yeah,
lives?
that's the real art, isn't it? And it doesn't require, becoming a monk or living in a cave.
Right.
It's about those subtle shifts in perspective, those small but consistent actions that can really make a big difference.
So baby steps, not giant leaps. I can get behind that. Where would you suggest someone even begin?
I think a great starting point is simply becoming more aware of the cycles that we talked about. Not just, day and night or the seasons, but the patterns in your own life, your thoughts, your reactions, your desires. Notice how they, ebb and flow, how they often repeat.
So it's like becoming like a keen observer of our own inner landscape.
Exactly. And as you observe, pay attention to those moments when you get swept up in that wind of desire that we talked about, that feeling of wanting something you don't have or feeling discontent with what you do.
Yeah. I'm already feeling called out here. But instead of like judging ourselves for these desires, we're simply acknowledging them.
Precisely. Curiosity is key here. Instead of suppressing or indulging, just ask yourself, like, where is this desire coming from? What need is it trying to fulfill?
Okay, that feels a lot less overwhelming. It's not about eradicating desire, but understanding it.
Exactly. And as you become more aware of like the roots of your desires, you can start making conscious choices about how you respond to them. You might realize that some desires are actually, quite healthy and they lead to growth and creativity.
While others, they might be leading us down a path of, unnecessary suffering.
Exactly. And that discerning ability is what the text refers to as viveka or discrimination.
Okay.
It's the ability to differentiate between what truly nourishes us and what ultimately depletes us.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these practices, they kind of work together. Mindfulness helps us notice. Detachment loosens our grip. And then Viveka gives us the clarity to choose wisely. But how do we cultivate that kind of discernment? It seems like it would require like a level of stillness that's hard to come by, in our busy lives.
And that's where meditation comes in, creating that space of inner quiet where we can observe our thoughts and emotions without getting carried away by them.
Okay, full transparency. Meditation is something I've always struggled with. My mind feels like a monkey swinging from vine to vine. Any advice for someone who can't seem to sit still?
I hear you. It's a common misconception that, meditation is about emptying the mind. It's more about creating space between thoughts, like watching clouds drift by. And it doesn't require, hours of practice. Even just 5 minutes a day can make a difference.
5 minutes. 5 minutes I can handle. But what about self-inquiry? How does that fit into the picture?
Self-inquiry is a way of of deepening our understanding of who we truly are.
Okay.
It's about moving beyond our limited sense of self,
Mm-hmm.
the self that's, defined by our roles, our possessions, our achievements, and connecting with that part of us that's eternal and unchanging.
Okay. That's a lot to unpack. Are we talking about like some kind of soul searching?
In a way, yes. It's about asking those really deep questions. Who am I beyond my thoughts, my emotions, my desires? What is this essence that exists even when everything else is in flux?
I can see how that could be a really powerful practice. But how do we go about it? Is it a matter of journaling or meditation or therapy or something else entirely?
It can be all of those things.
Yeah, okay.
Self-inquiry is a journey, and there are many paths. It can involve introspection, meditation, even conversations with, wise friends or mentors. The key is to approach it with an open mind and a genuine desire to know yourself more deeply.
And as we do that, as we like peel back those layers, we might start to recognize that our true self, it isn't bound by those, fleeting desires, by that sense of being stuck on the Ferris wheel.
Exactly. It's like discovering a whole new dimension of yourself, one that's rooted in stillness, in peace, in a sense of wholeness that can't be shaken by external circumstances.
And this brings us back to the idea of Brahman, the ultimate reality in Vedanta. How does this connect with our, everyday lives?
Imagine Brahman as the ocean, vast, unchanging.
Mm.
And we as individuals, we're like waves on that ocean. We rise and fall, we come and go, but the ocean remains. Meditation on Brahman is about realizing that we're not separate from that ocean. We're part of it.
So even though we experience ourselves as these individual waves, there's a deeper level where we're all interconnected, all part of that same vast ocean of being.
Exactly. And as we cultivate that awareness, that sense of oneness, we naturally become less attached to those things that we thought defined us, our possessions, our achievements, our desires.
It's like shifting our perspective from the wave to the ocean,
Mm,
recognizing that our true nature is much vaster and more enduring than we previously imagined.
precisely. And that shift, it can bring a profound sense of freedom and peace, even amidst the ups and downs of life. It's like stepping off the Ferris wheel and realizing that you can walk on solid ground.
But what about those times when we inevitably, step back onto the Ferris wheel, when we get swept away by those old patterns of thinking and behaving?
That's part of being human. It's not about being perfect, but about cultivating compassion for ourselves as we navigate these cycles. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You might fall a few times, but you get back up, dust yourself off, and keep practicing.
So it's not about like judging ourselves for those moments of falling off, but about recognizing that they're part of the journey.
Absolutely. And each time we fall off,
Mm-hmm.
we have an opportunity to learn something new about ourselves, to deepen our understanding, and to refine our practice.
Okay. That takes the pressure off. It's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And as we cultivate these practices, we begin to experience a shift in how we relate to time. We move from a sense of scarcity, of constantly running out of time, to a sense of abundance, of savoring each moment.
So instead of being on that treadmill, always chasing the next thing, we can actually be present for the beauty and richness of each moment.
Precisely. And that shift in perspective, it can be incredibly liberating. It allows us to step off that hamster wheel and connect with a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment.
This has been such an illuminating conversation. We've explored these profound practices and how they can help us, break free from those cycles of time and desire. But there's one image from the excerpt that keeps coming back to me, that wind of desire always blowing.
Such a potent image, isn't it? That constant churning of wants and cravings.
Yeah, it is. And it makes me wonder, like, if we could actually silence that wind, even for a moment, what would we hear? What would we discover beneath the surface?
Now that is a question worth pondering.
Yeah, that question about silencing the wind of desire, it feels like, it's like the heart of this whole excerpt, isn't it? It's almost an invitation to a different way of being.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah.
Like what would happen if we weren't always chasing after,
Right.
that next thing, that next achievement, that next hit of dopamine? What if we actually paused
Oh.
and just listened to the silence underneath all that noise?
It's a little bit scary to think about, to be honest. What if there's nothing there? What if it's just like empty?
It's a common fear, isn't it?
Mhm.
But what Vedanta suggests is actually like the opposite. It's not that silencing the wind of desire leads to emptiness. It's that it reveals a fullness that's already there
Mm-hmm.
beneath the surface.
So it's like we're so busy trying to like fill ourselves up with all this external stuff
Yeah,
that we totally miss the wellspring of contentment that's already within us.
exactly. It's like we're carrying around this incredible treasure chest,
Yeah.
but we're so fixated in collecting like trinkets outside that we never even open it.
Okay, yeah. I'm starting to see the appeal of this whole silencing the wind idea, but it's one thing to talk about it, conceptually, but another to actually experience it.
Right.
How do we even like begin to tap into that inner stillness?
Well, we've touched on some of the tools already: mindfulness, detachment, self-inquiry.
Right.
Each of these practices helps to create space to loosen the grip of those habitual desires. And then there's the practice of meditation on Brahman. Remember that ultimate reality we talked about.
Right, right. The ocean analogy. But how do you meditate on something that's like beyond description, beyond our limited understanding? It feels kind of like trying to grasp smoke.
It is. It's
Mm.
less about grasping and more about surrendering, letting go of our need to define, to categorize, to understand. It's about just simply being present, allowing ourselves to be held by that vastness.
So it's not about thinking our way to Brahman, it's about experiencing it directly.
Exactly. And that experience, it can be so subtle. It might not come with flashing lights and fanfare.
Yeah.
It might be a sense of deep peace, a feeling of interconnectedness, a glimpse of that boundless awareness that's always present beneath the surface.
Honestly, that sounds a lot more appealing than any Ferris wheel ride.
Yeah.
This whole conversation has been such a shift in perspective. It's like I've been given this new lens to view those everyday feelings of being stuck or overwhelmed.
And the beauty is, this lens is always available to you. It's not something you have to earn or achieve.
Yeah.
It's simply a matter of remembering to use it.
So it's not about becoming some kind of, enlightened being, but about integrating these practices, these insights into, like the fabric of our everyday lives.
Exactly. It's about bringing that awareness, that intentionality into each moment, whether you're, washing dishes or talking to a friend or simply breathing.
This has been an incredible deep dive, and I feel like I've, gained so much from exploring these ideas with you. But I'm sure our listeners are wondering the same thing I am. Where do we go from here?
That's the beauty of this path. It's a lifelong journey of discovery. But you don't have to climb a mountain or go on a silent retreat to start. The journey begins with, a single step, a single breath, a single choice to turn towards that inner stillness.
So for our listeners who are, feeling inspired and want to explore this further, what would you suggest as like a first step?
I would encourage you to revisit that question that we posed earlier. If you could silence the wind of desire for just one day, what would you focus on instead?
Right.
What would you discover about yourself, about the world, about the nature of reality itself? Let that be your guide.
That's such a powerful invitation. It's not about denying our desires, but about shifting our focus, creating space for something deeper, something more fulfilling to emerge.
And who knows what you might find when you step off that Ferris wheel and onto the solid ground of your own being.
Thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into the wisdom of Vedanta. It's been truly transformative.
It's been my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope this exploration has, sparked your curiosity and inspired you to embark on your own journey of self-discovery. Until next time, may you find peace and fulfillment in the stillness within.